1012, and it gives me 1,250 feet. Texas.
Announced the arrival of the flight from Los Angeles and Chicago.
Explosion.
And welcome, everybody, to this Wednesday, June 22nd, 2016 edition of TNZ Talk. I am Tony Trupiano. Before I bring on my partner, Richard Zombeck, I want to dedicate today's show to my father. Unfortunately, a year ago, almost to the minute, I lost my dad forever. Unfortunately, he passed away a year ago. It's not been an easy day for this guy. But we'll get through it. Anyway, our thanks again to Casey for the donation yesterday. Now let me bring on the Z. The Zinger. The man. Richard Zombeck. And as I said yesterday, Z, if you want to replace me, there are all kinds of T's to go after. There's not a lot of low-hanging fruit that has the Z. So I guess I'm stuck with you.
I was going to interrupt you again, but you yelled at me yesterday.
Well, the floor is all yours.
So I'm afraid to talk now.
Yeah, I somehow don't think that is true.
Friend, I'm sorry about your father. I had no idea. I mean, I know it was a year ago, but I had no idea that it was today.
So let's move on so you don't have to uncomfortably go, gee, now what do I follow this with?
Yeah, exactly. A friend of mine, speaking of Z's, sent me one of those, those Facebook memes that says, bet you can't find a name with a Z in it. And, it's one of those tricky memes that get you to like pages and stuff. And so that they can raise their traffic by people responding and stuff. So I sent him a bunch of names with Z's.
Okay.
Zach, Zimbabwe, Zaire, Zoloft. It didn't say name of people.
No, just things that start with the letter Z, like zoo and zebra.
Well, no, it said a name that starts with a Z.
Well, Zoloft is a name, yeah.
I used zoo, too. I said it was the name of a place.
Okay. Well, that's true. It is. Not sure where I'm going to go with that. So
there's really nowhere to go.
Indeed, that is true. Anyway, it's I did this yesterday. I'm doing it again today. I don't like Donald Trump. I don't like what he's doing, and I think it's an absolute scream that today he gave a speech in which he said Hillary Clinton is the biggest liar this country's ever known.
Yeah.
Takes one to know one.
Well, the raw story. Here's a headline from the raw story. NBC fact checks Trump's claim that Hillary Clinton is a world-class liar and finds it to be a lie.
Imagine that.
Trump may well attribute the accusation to himself because a whopping 59% of his claims were completely false versus only 12% of Clinton's.
But
that's overall.
But you saw
I think they actually found a couple instances, fact check did, a couple instances where Donald Trump told the truth. They found three instances
in the entire speech
in which he told the truth overall, like at all.
Oh,
ever.
Like his name. He's an adulterer.
I think. Yeah,
because he did admit to being an adulterer.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Oh, well, good for him.
In fact, I was listening to an interview this morning on NPR. And there's a conservative dude by the name of Eric Erickson. Maybe you're familiar with him. Not a fan of Donald Trump. And I'm being really nice by saying that. And he was being a good Christian man by holding back. But he referred to Donald Trump as a pathological liar more than once. And he did not walk away from the evangelical meeting yesterday feeling like Well, feeling like he could support one Mr. Donald Trump.
Well, I mean, it was interesting. I can't remember if it might have been today. Trump gave that speech to the evangelical group there, or whatever they're called, a group of conservative evangelicals, and later a reporter asked the panel to raise their hands. Raise your hands if you're going to vote for Donald Trump, and of course none of them did. And then Joe Scarborough on Morning Joe today made the comment that, nobody's going to raise their hand, but when they're leaving the room, they'll go, I'm going to vote for him. I loved what he had to say. So, possibly the better question would have been, how many of you know someone who will vote for Donald Trump?
No, that's not even the better question. The better question is, of the 900 pastors, priests, clergy, whatever, religious leaders were in that room, by a show of hands, how many of you have received a check from Donald Trump? This Eric Erickson said that the vast majority of those that were enthusiastic to begin yesterday's meeting, and then at the end, which is where he got the 2 standing ovations, many of them have benefited financially from their friendship with Donald Trump. So take that for what it's worth.
Well, like the attorney generals, Pam Bondi, for example, from Florida.
You love her.
Who I also can't stand.
You love her.
I can't stand her.
Okay. Does this mean we're going to have a conversation about foreclosures? Because I have to go to the restroom, and I just thought I'd let you go for a while and come back.
No, we're not going to have a conversation about foreclosures. Okay. Tony Trippiano.
I'm teasing it.
24-year radio veteran.
So, how many years?
24, right?
Yeah. I now say 25 because I'm going on 25. Once you pass, it's kind of like, well, I guess that doesn't work with your age, does it?
Well, I'm a writer, so I'll say nearly 3 decades.
There you go. For nearly 3 decades.
Nearly 3 decades on the radio. The better part of 3 decades.
Technically that's not true, but heck, who am I to argue that? So
nearly 3 decades.
As we
for over 2 decades.
Okay. We're going to now talk about gun control. We're going to talk about the House of Representatives, and we're going to talk about kind of a cool thing that's going on right now.
Yeah, it was. It
still is.
It was a cool thing, but some not so cool things happened with it.
Do tell.
So, John Lewis, representative from Georgia,
the 5th congressional district.
The 5th congressional district. John Lewis, who marched in Selma with Dr. Martin Luther King, started with a speech today in the House of Representatives about gun control or lack thereof, blasting the Republicans for their inaction on gun control, particularly following the shooting in Orlando, also referencing the shooting at Sandy Hook, and led a good old 1960s sit-in in which Democrats did sit on the floor, some of them cross-legged, and protested. Now, the cameras were on, but Speaker of the House Paul Ryan, a Republican, quickly gavelled the session, shutting down Congress for the day, and had the cameras turned off.
No.
Yes.
And yet there is still video leaking from that chamber.
Yeah. Yeah, well, on Facebook, right? Because you can quickly do a live broadcast feed from your phone app. Anyone can do it. And, here's the thing, right? We talk about, we listen to the GOP talk about First Amendment rights, and everyone has a right, and how could you infringe on people's rights? And here they are in the House of Representatives, a protest, a sit-in, led by a guy that was beaten by police, beaten almost to death by police during a march in Selma for civil rights. And the Republicans think it's okay to shut the cameras off,
all right,
so that none of us can see what's going on.
All right, so with all that said, so that we give people a little background, this is, of course, about the House not having an opportunity to debate or to posture, depending on what political bent you are, on gun control. And, you know, it just seems to me that there may be a slight chance that we may see some action. I read a story out of the Hill late last night, early this morning, that the Republicans and Democrats may have actually found a compromise measure, but apparently this sit-in is more demonstrable, or is it really trying to force action?
That's a good question, because, they always seem to be gaining ground. They always seem to be coming to some kind of compromise and understanding. And then when the votes come up, there are two Republicans that apparently didn't get the memo and vote down or vote with the Democrats. The rest of them, just shoot it down. And in a legislature where we need, 60% of the votes, the Republicans pretty much control whatever the hell they want.
All right, so here's the deal. We've got some audio from John Lewis, and I want to get, maybe at best we play that first, and then we'll come back and really kind of walk through this, because I think this is an important teaching moment. I'm not being a smartass here. And I think it's a great jumping off point to continue to talk about why this is critical. So let's listen to John.
Well, and let's also keep in mind that there was another time last year when John Lewis was talking that Darrell Issa cut his microphone during a committee hearing. So this is not the first, and this again, this is a civil rights guy that was beaten by police for marching with civil rights. I mean, I've obviously said that a couple times, but I can't stress that enough. I mean, he's an iconic figure in history and in the Congress. And to be treated like this after everything he's been through, he should be revered. He should be praised. They should be kissing his butt. And instead, they're shutting off microphones and cameras so that no one can see this. And he's being treated like if he was black in the 1950s.
All right, let's listen to this audio. We'll come back.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask that all of my colleagues join me on the floor. On occasion, Mr. Speaker, I have had what I call an executive session with myself. For months, even for years, through several sessions of Congress, I wondered what would bring this body to take action? What would finally make Congress do what is right, what is just, what the people of this country have been demanding, and what is long overdue? We have lost hundreds and thousands of innocent people to gun violence. Tiny little children. Babies, students, and teachers, mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, daughters and sons, friends and neighbors. And what has this body done? Mr. Speaker, nothing. Not one thing. We have turned a deaf ears. We have turned deaf ears to the blood of the innocent and the concern of our nation. We are blind to a crisis. Mr. Speaker, where is the heart of this body? Where is our soul? Where is our moral leadership? Where is our courage? Those who work on bipartisan solutions are pushed aside. Those who pursue common sense improvement are beaten down. Reason is criticized. Obstruction is praised. Newtown, Aurora, Charleston, Orlando. What is the tipping point? Are we blind? Can we see? How many more mothers, how many more fathers need to shed tears of grief before we do something? We were elected to lead, Mr. Speaker. We must be headlights and not tail lights. We cannot continue to stick our heads in the sand and ignore the reality of mass gun violence in our nation. Deadly mass shootings are becoming more and more frequent. Mr. Speaker, this is a fight. It is not an opinion. We must remove the blinders. The time for silence and patience is long gone. We are calling on the leadership of the House to bring common sense gun control legislation to the House floor. Give us a vote. Let us vote. We came here to do our job. We came here to work. The American people demand an action. Do we have the courage? Do we have raw courage to make at least a down payment on ending gun violence in America? We can no longer wait. We can no longer be patient. So today we come to the well of the House to dramatize the need for action. Not next month, not next year, but now, today. Sometimes you have to do something out of the ordinary. Sometimes you have to make a way out of no way. We have been too quiet for too long. There comes a time when you have to say something, when you have to make a little noise. When you have to move your feet. This is the time. Now is the time to get in the way. The time to act is now. We will be silent. No more. The time for silence is over. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Connecticut.
And shortly after that, he was gavelled, the House session was shut down, and the cameras were turned off.
I just don't understand. The theory here is that you think you're silencing a voice. All they did was turn the volume up louder. All they did was force and focus on an issue that they would rather just go away. So by turning the cameras off, by gaveling the session closed, they actually accomplished the exact opposite of what they were hoping to accomplish.
Yeah, actually what was interesting, too, was C-SPAN was reporting on this because, that's what they report on. And they were running a live feed. And the announcer on C-SPAN made it very clear that C-SPAN does not control the cameras in that room, in the chamber. So, letting people know that this was not done by C-SPAN, and this is all over the news. I mean, we're talking about it. I posted on Liberals Unite, and I'm assuming that if you do sit-in, House sit-in or John Lewis, that's all you're going to find. So there we go.
Well, he's a beautiful speaker. He's a beautiful man. He's a beautiful speaker. He's been a courageous leader. You said he's an icon. There's certainly nothing but truth in that statement. But I would think that there's a cumulative effect. And part of where I wanted to go with this, is there's a cumulative effect to being in Congress as many years as he has been, or people like my own Congressman John Conyers and others. Even if it's your very first term in Congress, to be a Democrat, to show up for work every day knowing that you're not going to be able to do a significant portion of your job. You can still do the constituency work. You can still do what congressmen and women do. But you don't vote. You don't create laws. You don't move others to action. You don't find compromise. You don't find the details. In fact, you ignore them. And I would think somebody like John Lewis has just had enough. You could hear it in his voice.
Well, I think I agree with you. I mean, you can hear it in his voice, and you really have to wonder. I mean, what he must be thinking. I mean, this is a guy who fought for the rights of not only African Americans but everyone in this country. Went to Congress. Prior to that, I don't want to do this in unchronological order. Was beaten up and put in jail for his beliefs and for his activism. Grew up at a time when blacks were treated horribly. Gets to Congress. Has had incredible and illustrious career, and for the last 8 years has watched while Republicans have, out of bigotry and racism, defied the first African American president. I mean, it's got to be like, oh my God, this is great. We have an African American president. Oh, gee, are you kidding me? I mean, and then 8 years of just BS after this incredible feat, really, or happening, or whatever you want to call it, something that this guy's probably waited for his entire life, and nearing the end of his life has probably been pissed off for the majority of it,
if not pissed on. It's just horrible. All right, well, the whole point of this, of course, is to not just, again, I said, is it a demonstration? Is it a sincere act of trying to get something accomplished? And I don't know that we need to separate them. But the ongoing discussion since the Orlando massacre about gun control, about common sense legislation, even as it relates to just the slightest number of people that would be affected by a law that the president would sign, Republicans are against. Now, you've got a boatload of audio, and so I'll let you get to it in any order you want, saving the one that you started to play earlier to the end, because that's a very different conversation.
Yeah, let's listen to Larry Pratt, who's claiming that the Democrats want to, they just want to take everyone's rights away. Conservative radio.
Larry, what I call what's happening with this attack on our Second Amendment, and if you're a Christian or subscribe to traditional Judeo-Christian American values today, you're considered a hate monger. Your First Amendment right is meaningless. The public displays of anti-Christian immorality are everywhere, including in government, and there seems to be no consideration for the faith of good people everywhere. But if you're a pervert, a deviant, a derelict, someone who's captured by, decadent lifestyle, whatever, your rights are protected. But the good people, their rights are not being protected. So it's more
quite a rhetorical sleight of hand, isn't it? They say they're for diversity, they say they're for freedom of speech, and you're free to say anything you like as long as you agree with me. What hypocrites!
Yeah, no, I mean it's just amazing to me that we live in a country that was established by moral people. I remember de Tocqueville saying that America was a great place because the people were good, and that if the people ever stopped being good, America would stop being great. And I think de Tocqueville had it right.
I'm afraid so.
And we look at this situation today. I mean, in my view, as not just as a gun owner, but just as a patriotic American, the very thought that Hillary Clinton could be considered for president is the most debasing, immoral, ridiculous notion in modern time to me.
Except for the fact that we already have Hillary without a skirt as president. So we've been debased for some time now by a guy who, pretty much by his own words, hates the country, wants to fundamentally transform it. Obviously, he doesn't like the country the way it is, or he wouldn't be talking about fundamentally transforming it. Hi, honey, home tonight. Hey, listen, our marriage needs some fundamental transformation. Really? You're on the sofa tonight, buddy.
Yeah, no, I don't. But again, I think that you mentioned Saul Alinsky, but I think we can take these discussions clear back to maybe pre-John Dewey. I mean, they've penetrated our school systems to the point where they've radicalized children against their own ideals, their own morals, their own family substructure. Kids literally think their parents are morons, and they're taught to think that.
Right.
If your parents believe in God, they need mental help. If your parents
and the ones that you put your confidence in are those of us who are government employees. And so, yeah, it's a coup d'etat without having had a tank in the street.
You like that?
Here's a quick question. Name a single president that didn't want to be president because he wanted to change the world.
Yeah, I know. And I love that, too. We've got Hillary Clinton without a skirt. And he also mentions de Tocqueville, Alexis de Tocqueville, who was a French statesman, 19th century statesman, historian, and social philosopher, who also he came to America in the 1830s, and also said that in a democracy, the people get the government they deserve. He came to observe democracy, and he did say what he said was America is great because America is good, and if America ever ceases to be good, America will cease to be great. So, let's take all of the commandments and see how many of these guys are actually abiding by those, or any of the 7 deadly sins. And, greed for one, was it sloth is another one. So, America has ceased to be good. So it's no longer great, according to this ass clown with his conservative radio show.
Yes.
But let me just, because there was a little short one in here that you noticed that I was actually going to surprise you with. I just want to play one part of that again and listen to how hypocritical what he said in that was, which I can't play.
Okay. Then do tell me. Do tell me.
And you're free to say anything you like as long as you agree with me.
There it is. There it is. You're free to say.
Here's the deal.
Which is what the Republicans have been saying since forever.
All right. So here I am, the proud liberal, not just a liberal, not a Democrat. I'm a proud liberal. In fact, some have called me a flaming liberal. I'm okay with all that. I posted a story yesterday evening that Michelle Bachmann, former member of Congress, former presidential candidate, is now on Donald Trump's evangelical advisory team. I don't even want to know how you define that. So I post this story and basically say she's bat crap crazy. Now, I am a known liberal. So this guy jumps into the middle of a discussion of people agreeing with me, saying, oh, so he says, well, what his first comment was, what makes her crazy? And I said, unless you weren't paying attention, and I was, pay attention. That's what makes her crazy.
Yeah.
All right. So he says, why is it that all you liberals have to do is hate unless we agree with you? Well, I don't know who we are. Don't know who the guy is. But you jump on that would be like you and I jumping on Larry Pratt's Facebook page, right? It would be ridiculous for us to do that and to try to argue common sense. The problem is Michelle Bachmann really is bat crap crazy. I mean, she really is. This woman is really, a couple cards short of a full deck. And this guy wants to defend her, but I don't want to hear it. And, oh, by the way, the other 40 or 50 people that jumped all over his crap for saying that or writing that don't want to hear it either because we were paying attention. What is it with evangelicals that they just want to believe what they want to believe?
I don't know if it's so much evangelicals as the general population. I mean, really, when it comes to Republicans, you're just, pretty much surrounded by dopes.
All right, so I don't know how politically active you were when Michael Dukakis was running, but oh my God, was that hard for me. He was just dull. There was no reason to get excited about a Dukakis presidency. None. Zero. And as a Democrat, I didn't go out there and create scenarios in my head that made him more exciting for some reason. So why do they feel compelled that just because they're stuck with Donald Trump, that all of a sudden they can justify his lying? And by the way, while we were talking, I have MSNBC on, and PolitiFact did a fact check of both the Trump speech, as you reported, and the Clinton speech. Pants on fire, 59% of the time for Donald Trump. For Hillary Clinton, 12%.
Pants on fire, 12%, huh?
12%.
Interesting.
Don't know what the 12% was, but...
Yeah, there's an article in Slate that maybe we'll talk about tomorrow, or actually we should say our next episode, that's titled Donald Trump's speech about Hillary Clinton was terrifyingly effective. And I'm going to venture to guess that it was terrifyingly effective because it hit all of the pain points of what Republicans and people who don't like Hillary Clinton think she's all about.
All right, so that brings me to my next point. The Quinnipiac poll that came out yesterday. Quinnipiac polls are pretty pristine, certainly very fair-handed. Shows Donald Trump actually winning in categories that concern me. And they're categories that he shouldn't be winning in. One of them is a strong leader, is beating Hillary Clinton. Not by a lot, but beating her nonetheless. Better equipped to handle the economy. Not leading by a lot, but still leading. Who are they polling, and what are these people looking at?
Yeah, I always find those interesting, and I think Chris Matthews was talking about either that poll or a similar poll and that somehow Trump would be better. I mean, just the fact that he'd be better with the economy, right? When he says, I was really good with my money. I declared bankruptcy several times. And if we have to, even as a country, we can default on our debt.
Well, I still think my favorite Hillary Clinton line of all time, and hopefully she'll be able to trump that line, is Donald Trump has written a lot of books. They all end at chapter 11.
Yeah, that was beautiful. That
really was a great line.
We played that yesterday.
Yeah,
didn't we?
it was just a great line. It was just a great line. So here's a question. I think
what she should have said is, we don't want his tiny little hands on the economy. That's what I think she should have said.
Well, you kind of inferred that, and I'll take it. That must have been in your advisory capacity, Z.
It was in my article.
But even the conservative talk show host I visit with every morning doesn't believe that people should have AR-15s or Sig Sauer, which is what the mass murderer used. But they're in the same family. The one he used is just a little more compact and handy, and you can wear it on you and nobody will know. So it begs the question. She actually asked me this question a couple days ago. So we'll ask it to you, and then we'll get to some audio. Who really needs to have an AR-15? Besides the special forces in the military, which is who it was developed for.
Yeah, well, Fox News is claiming, too, that gun sales have gone up, and I'm quoting, amongst the gays.
My silence is deliberate.
that gun sales have gone up exponentially amongst the gays.
Because as people are going in to buy guns at a gun shop where guys with mullets work, they're being polled as they're leaving saying, gee, you bought a gun. Do you happen to be gay? Why, yes, I am.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, I'll tell you, though, that said, I have some gay friends that, have been posting on Facebook and talking about this, that because of what happened in Orlando, that it was obviously targeted, that, LGBT homosexuals were obviously targeted, that they're afraid. I mean, and that, not only because I know them, but that's kind of sad, Tony, that now we have another segment of society that is walking around afraid for their lives,
Well, you now have your African American and you're gay.
Yeah.
All right. So you've got some audio on why people need an AR-15. Would love to hear that one.
Yeah, let's play that. This is Sandy Rios, another conservative radio jackass.
Well, it wasn't an AR-15 weapon. It was a Sig Sauer MCX carbine gun. It's a semi-automatic. No. The semi-automatic AR-15, which is routinely confused as being a machine gun or a fully automatic weapon, is one of the most popular rifles in the United States. Of course, a lot of discussion is, why would anybody need that? Well, I think, besides the fact that they're very popular for hunting and gun owners, I think the fact that we are in great danger might be a reason why we would need it. And I heard a great explanation from a gun expert that the problem is, one of the battles right now with police is that they need to be armed at least as well as the drug cartels, as the Islamists, as the whoever is getting guns. They need to have at least the ability to have the same kind of firepower as these would-be killers. And I think the argument can be made for American citizens. We have to be able to protect ourselves. Obviously, I think about those. This did not go to the level of guns, thank God. But remember those protests at a Donald Trump rally in California? where a man in a wheelchair was attacked, a woman was not attacked, but she was hit by eggs in the face and surrounded by a mob of men. It's just, I do think, people are understanding. That's probably why 30,000 AR-15s sold since the Orlando shooting.
Wow.
Because the gays bought them. So if those people had just had guns, they could have shot the other person that...
See, here's a question for you, and I'm not looking for an exact number. Of the 892 mass shootings we've had in the last 5 years, how many of them were committed by Muslims? Under 5.
Yeah.
Under 5. Under 5.
Yep.
In fact, I think I can safely say under 3. Or 3 and under. I don't understand a call for profiling. Why we don't call the other, let's call it, I'll be really kind here. Of the 892, let's say 880. Why aren't we calling this radical Christianity?
Yeah, exactly. Interestingly enough, funny you should mention that. I wrote an article about this, and we have some audio about this. And Donald Trump, over the weekend on the Sunday shows, basically, well, he didn't basically say. He said that we should be racially profiling. He also claimed, he was on Face the Nation, and this is what he said. And this is his quote. Well, I think profiling is something that we're going to have to start thinking about as a country. Other countries do it. You look at Israel and you look at others. They do it, and they do it successfully. And I hate the concept of profiling, but we have to start using common sense, and we have to use our head. And he followed that up with, it's not the worst thing to do.
Okay.
It's just common sense.
All right, well, let's listen to the audio, and then we'll expound.
So this is
expound.
This is Van Jones responding to on Monday, I believe, responding to what Donald Trump said over the weekend on Face the Nation. And Van Jones was part of the Obama administration and is now a CNN commentator and political activist. And this was his response during a panel also on CNN.
Well, first of all, I just think it's very interesting that we're talking about racially profiling in the context of mass shootings. The vast majority of people who are doing the mass shootings in America are not Muslims at all. So exactly, the young white men. It turns out that even the people who are ideologically motivated, you mentioned ideology, you are 7 times more likely to be killed by a right-wing extremist, a racist or an anti-government nut job, 7 times more likely to be killed by that person than by a Muslim.
But is that ideology important to your consideration? Yes, it is.
Well, sure. But I'm just saying
sure.
before we even just go down the road of should we racially profile Muslims or not, if I came on TV and said let's start racially profiling white men, let's start racially profiling young white men who are loners with bowl haircuts, people would think, wow, that's a pretty unfortunate conclusion for you to come to. Certainly, there's a better way for us to move forward. So I just think it's important for us to recognize we have so much associated the religion of Islam with shooting. If a Christian shoots somebody, we don't say a Christian shot him. But if a Muslim shoots somebody, we say a Muslim shot him. I think that's starting to muddy the waters.
And I would have to agree.
The only thing I disagree with is
the waters.
Says, I believe it's beginning to muddy the waters. No, the waters have been muddy for a long time.
That's exactly where I was going. I think it's beginning to muddy the waters was a bit of an understatement. And he's absolutely right. I mean, here's the thing, right? And this is I kind of go into this in my article on Liberals Unite. That hasn't published yet for some reason, but it will shortly. What sounds good and what feels good to people like Trump supporters and apparently the NRA is it's not us, it's those people. It's them. They're attacking us. They're coming here. Look, I have a friend who's a conservative. I'm not going to mention his name, and I would like that you not either. He lives in a very quiet town in Massachusetts. He has an AR-15 and other assault rifles, automatic and semi-automatic, and probably owns about 50 guns in his safe. And my question to him is always, wait, do you really, is ISIS coming or something? I mean, who in God's name do you have to defend yourself from? I mean, I understand the concept of having a gun to defend your home, but do you need an arsenal? And you know, this open carry garbage with people walking around in machine guns. I don't want to be in a restaurant. I don't want to be at Denny's having breakfast or lunch one day. Not that I ever would, but and have like 5 guys walk in with assault rifles. Do you?
No. And so here's the question. You're walking through your local food mart, and let's assume, for the sake of argument, I guess I'll ask you, does Massachusetts have open carry laws?
No.
Okay. Well, many states do. Can you imagine walking in to pick up a spaghetti squash and seeing a guy with an AR-15 slung over his shoulder?
Yeah, exactly.
What would you think?
And actually, the most horrifying part about that whole visual is the spaghetti squash.
You know, see, after 9/11, in November of that year, I had to travel to Fort Lauderdale. And I was going for the radio show. And obviously, it was just over a month since the Twin Towers came down, etc. The military presence in airports, as you are well aware, was profound. Just seeing a man or a woman in uniform with an M16 at the ready, not slung around their shoulder, at the ready, scared the hell out of me.
Well,
and they were there to keep me safe.
You know, yeah, and I grew up in France and lived in Switzerland, and you know, as much as Americans like to say that the French police aren't armed, which is completely ludicrous, and that you know the Swiss aren't armed. There are basically 3 or 4 different variations of police, and there's the police, there's the gendarme, and there's the military. And the military is often called out for events, soccer games, speeches, things like that. And the gendarme, I remember walking around the streets in Lyon and in Paris and in Nice, and there are gendarmes in the airport and in the streets with submachine guns slung over their shoulders, like you said, at the ready. And that's a daily occurrence, right? So it's not like, you know, all these other countries that have shootings or whatever have them because the police aren't armed. They happen because they're nut jobs, okay? And you know, and Switzerland, just about every male from 18 to 55, I think, does 2 weeks of military service a year. They have a gun, a rifle, a military rifle in their basement. But if they're seen in the street with that, they're arrested. It's used for military operations. It's not your average homeowner has a gun in their house under their bed for, you know, there was a cartoon, and I did post it, and it was a French cartoonist, and it was his view of America. And there's a kid on a step stool with all these guns on the wall next to him, and the kid's on the step stool reaching for a shelf full of books that he can't reach. And the guns are just to his right, in perfect reach. And that's really how the rest of the world views us. And that, to me, is pathetically sad and frightening.
Well, and we don't have time to get into how many innocent children have been killed, either by a sibling, a cousin, a friend, because dad puts the gun in the shoebox in a closet thinking that kids aren't snooping. I used to hide shoeboxes and put notes in them and say, you thought there was something in here, didn't you? Yeah. I did. Yeah.
Well, that doesn't surprise me.
No, I mean, I like to mess with my kids. All right, so soon enough,
you're just not a very nice person.
Nah. Soon enough, we will have vice presidential candidates on both sides. By the way, while we've been talking, some members of the Senate have joined their colleagues in the House, including Senator Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and others, to demonstrate as well. Thought I would share that. But you happen to live in a very interesting place, politically profound. It is the home of the Kennedy dynasty, and people can have their opinions all they want. I was a huge fan of John Kennedy, of certainly Bobby, and Ted. And in fact, there's that part of me that wanted another Kennedy, and I would have been fine with Ted Kennedy. I mean, Chappaquiddick didn't help him, obviously. But an anomaly happened. And that anomaly's name is Scott Brown. Can you, and we don't have a lot of time, and I do want to get to that audio, but can you just explain how that happened?
I unfortunately can't. I mean, Ted Kennedy died, and we had an election, and Scott Brown drove around in his truck, and won. I have no explanation for it. I also have no explanation. I mean, I do have an explanation for it, but our governor, Governor Baker, is a Republican in Massachusetts, which is typically a blue state, and he is the most popular governor in the country right now.
Well, some wonderful
and I'll tell you this: he's a Republican, and he's doing a great job for the state of Massachusetts.
There are some wonderful things that have happened in Massachusetts. Education. Public education is pristine. It has become the national model for the way other states should fund education. Job creation. I could go on and on and on. There's
healthcare, thanks to Mitt Romney, a Republican who ran for president.
They're second only to the state of Minnesota in growth of their economy. That's huge. That's huge. Anyway, let's play that Scott Brown audio, because Scott Brown is failed at everything. He lost his reelection bid. He tried to run for the Senate in another state. They didn't want him. And, maybe he wants to be VP. Who knows?
Yeah, and just for the record, so that nobody has any questions, I picked this piece of audio because I really like Elizabeth Warren, and I can't stand Scott Brown. So here's the audio.
I want you to take a listen to what Elizabeth Warren, your old nemesis, had to say about you and Donald Trump.
Yep. I hear that Donald Trump is floating Scott Brown as a possible running mate. And I thought, so Donald Trump really does have a plan to help the unemployed. Think of it as the perfect reality TV show. Celebrity Apprentice meets The Biggest Loser.
Ouch. Senator Brown, what do you say?
Well, she's used that line about 30 times. And, at some point, Charles, the fact that she spent about half the time at the Democratic convention in New Hampshire, hitting on me, it's getting a little creepy, to be honest with you. And then you put in the fact that, she is obviously using gender-based jokes to hide the fact that she's done nothing in her years there compared to my record, which is quite a record of accomplishment. It's a little bit sad, but I get it. Obviously I still am bothersome.
You struck a chord, Senator Brown. You struck a chord. Hey, thank you very much for calling in, and again, we'll talk to you again real soon. Thanks.
All right, Charles.
I have a truck. I have a truck.
Well, as Elizabeth Warren said, one less person would be unemployed. All right, clean it up for us, Z.
Well, can I just one thing real quick is, did you hear any gender-based joke in there?
No.
No, neither did I. So, once again, Scott Brown is a moron. I'm going to give the 411 on TNZ Talk. You can go to our website at tnztalk.com. You can find out how to friend us, follow us, all the information you want about us. Also, our archives are there. And, of course, the most important thing, you can find out how to fund us, how to support us financially and otherwise. We need your money and we need your support. And we need you to help us spread the word about TNZ Talk.
And we are growing, but we do need all that. We got to start doing this at the beginning again. We keep forgetting that. With that said, again, just one last time, Pop, wherever you are, I miss you, buddy. Z, you have a great evening. I wish everybody the same. Stay glued, because God only knows in this political world what's next. For Richard Zombeck, I am Tony Trupiano. And as always, we ask that you be well.